So here's the morning thought. We may never appreciate the importance of subjecting ourselves to authority, guardianship, or parenthood in our lives. While we are oblivious to the protection and providence of such, we tend to believe we can do well on our own, that we can survive and make it without them. This is the folly of ignorance for the immature. We may take for granted the shield an umbrella provides until we step outside of it. Hashtag respect authority, stay covered, and step out at the right time. So, Miss Polite, let's reflect on this authority.
I like how you say it.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I guess we just flow. Like I was just having coffee with you.
Yeah.
So honestly, the thing that captured me was the last, if you remember, when I got the reflection from you via SMS in the morning, I read up until the hashtags. So I didn't go into the hashtags. So the first thing to rise inside of me was defensiveness, right? So I had to pay attention to why am I defensive? And I actually said it depends on the context, because then authority, there is a point where one has to come into sovereignty into their lives and independence in their lives. So for me, it depends at what stage of growth you are. You get what I mean? When do you step out? When do you step in? Does covering ever cease? And to what extent, do you balance the fact that now I am grown? I'm 35 now. I'm a married man. I have a wife. I have children. Now you're the authority in your house, but you still have a father figure, or you have let me say in the context of a church, you have a pastor and all of that. Then where do you draw the line, between the dependency and the independency, the sovereignty and the covering? And then I saw your last hashtag and it says, can you read it again? You said it.
Step out at the right time.
Step out at the right time. So that's what I wanted to just to chat on her. Then how do you know what the right time or when the right time is, Babkunen? That's the one thing that stood out for me.
So that's an interesting question about the right time. Because as people, we may never know for sure that now is the right time. We will always be questioning. We will always have that kind of self-doubt that I don't think this is the right time. Or at times we may think it is the right time, but it's actually not. And then it comes back to the context of when you are under the covering, the one who is covering you will know that it is now the right time for you to step out. So let's take the example of a woman who has grown and has met someone and she wants to get married. Usually, let's take it in the context of an ideal environment where the father would then say, yes, now I am ready to give you away in marriage, right? Now, I just want to clarify the condition or the context of this whole discussion so that we are not sidetracked by everything else. We are assuming this is a state where family is normal, where there aren't any issues about patriarchy and all of those debates that surround such issues, but that a girl has allowed herself to grow and subjected herself or submitted herself to the authority of her father. And she is at that point where this guy who is proposing marriage or wants to build a family with her is then coming to the father and saying, I would like, through the necessary processes, he comes to the parents and say, I would like to take your daughter and make her my wife, a partner with whom I can build the family. So it's that type of context.
Okay.
So in that context, then the father would be able to say, I know my daughter. I've raised her, and I believe she is at the point where in her life she is ready to start a family.
Mm-hmm.
And he then at that point when the young man comes into the family to say, I want this woman to be my wife. If the father believes she's not ready, he will say so, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if the father believes she is ready, he will agree to the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And then when on the day of the wedding, the father comes and takes his daughter's hand and hands over the hand to the groom, saying, I am now handing over my daughter to you.
Mm-hmm.
You will now be responsible for her. She is now going to be your partner. So that is when in the context of a marriage type of setting. So let's
Mm-hmm.
take a boy child. A boy child says, I want to start my own family. But his father or his parents have realized that he still needs to do some growing.
Mm-hmm.
If he has been submitted to their authority and respects their authority, he will listen when they say, wait, you are not yet ready.
Mm-hmm.
But at times when they see that he is ready through how he behaves, not what he says, through
Mm-hmm.
how he behaves, they will come to him and say, perhaps it's time you thought of, right,
Mm-hmm.
starting your own family. And they give their blessings. So it is in those contexts. And then we take it into the context of a church.
Mm-hmm.
In a church, when the senior pastor has taught his congregation and he has seen maturity and he is led by the authority under his subjection, where he's led by the one whom he subjected himself to, in this context, God. He can
Mm-hmm.
then say, God has shown me that I have sons now. I no longer have children, I have sons. Sons not necessarily in the gender context,
Mm-hmm.
but sons in the context of maturity. So he comes and says, in this context, I have sons, and the what you call the word of this house needs to spread to other areas, and then he appoints pastors to oversee other churches and start other churches. So he would release them into the world so that they can then continue what he has started, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if a person or a junior pastor in a church decides, I want to do my own thing, and the pastor says, wait, but
Mm-hmm.
he decides he's going to go anyway, and then he goes, he doesn't have the blessing, so he's not stepping out at the right time. Hence the context of, irrespective of where we are, we
Mm-hmm.
need to know and we need to be attentive to the sign that now is the right time.
Okay. You've said a mouthful.
And you're about to see more.
Yeah. The first thing is you were talking that comes to mind. You're talking about a perfect setting, right? Which is more like a North
Well,
Pole.
the
It
ideal rather than perfect, yeah.
centers us in the conversation. So I guess what I'm thinking now is I'm trying as much as possible to get out of my head, because as a woman, as a Black person, as it's very hard to separate the issue. I don't know if that makes sense,
I agree.
from what you call it, abuse, when authority now steps the normal or the perfect setting context, so it becomes a bit challenging. But
Yes.
as far as possible, as I could remove myself from it, the one question that came was, again, when where does one draw the balance, right? So you are the authority figure. And according to the growth continuum as a person, I am a child, right? And then I grow into a young woman, right? Obviously, as I grow, I develop my sense of self, right? So you would go from, I'm trying not to speak up in esoteric terms or the terms or your chakra, what, but there's a part where you individuate as a person, right? So as an individual person, your senses, your intuition, your intuitive sense also matures as a person. Your sense of who I am also matures, right? Your God sense has never been a child, if I may put it that way, right?
Yes.
So God has always been there and as your authority figure before any other thing, whoever you deem God to be in this sense. So what I come to now find friction in as I'm engaging in this perfect sense is, when now do I know who then is my authority between God and this person, and who does God talk to first, and where is my okay a sense of I've made a decision that I am ready. I don't know if that makes sense. And then you as a father are affirming that. Do you get what I mean? At
Yeah.
what point? Like I'm still subjected to you. Say you're my parents in a household, right? I'm still subject to you, but now I'm grown and I know what I want, right?
Yeah.
And as an individual, and even if you raised me according to a certain set of values, my development might dictate that there is a clash in values, and it's not necessarily in a bad sense. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
How I think you get where I'm trying to formulate this
I
question,
do.
that yeah, like how do you um make room for the one who is subject to authority? Do you
All
get what
right.
I mean?
Yeah.
For their individual self to form part of that, and who is primary between the one who gives authority or covering or whatever, and the one who is a self, who's an individual, right? Because I
Yeah.
no longer am a child in this regard. I'm an individual with my own set of values. I am developed to an extent that I know that this is my God sense, this is my God self, and this is my image, and this is what I like. Do you get what I mean? So how do you balance the two? How do you maneuver that
Right.
context? Hope it
I
makes sense.
like the question. Very, very, very on point.
Mhm.
So in answering it, I want to share this. I was given a book by Khalil Gibran, and there's a part in the book titled "The Prophet," where he
Mhm.
talks about children, right? So he says on the second stanza, "You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls. For their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he
Mhm.
bends you, the parent, with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. So he's talking to parents about children.
Mhm.
And then he says, as a parent, you must be like a bow that is able to bend,
Mhm.
because in you he puts those arrows, which are children, so that they may go forth into the world. So
Mhm.
as parents, we are tasked to raising children so that they may go out into the world, not
Mhm.
stay with us always. So
Mhm.
how do you then know? And how do you bring about that balance? You can be raised with a set of values, and then you can deviate from those values and form your own. And when there's a clash and you come to a point where you're saying, I want to deviate and I believe I am ready, what then happens? I will, in the context where I am your father and you're my daughter, I will ask you, why do you believe you are ready? And depending on the engagement we have, I can basically tell your level of maturity in how you engage. If it's just my friends are like this, everyone is like that, this is like your argument is incoherent, then I will say from my point of view that I don't sense any maturity or readiness for you to take on this journey. But if you are able to say, you have raised me from this, and I have discovered this along the way, and therefore I believe, like you can really have a coherent argument, and I can hear in how you are expressing yourself that even though we are different now at this stage, that our principles and our values differ, but you are mature in your thinking, and you have really thought this through and have thought this out, then I can understand that it is the right time then for you to go and explore the world. Consequently, or conversely, if I see that you are immature, but you don't want to understand why I'm saying that you are immature in wanting to step out and that's not the right time, and you still insist, I can say, oh, good and well, go. But I know that at some point life will beat you up, right? That things will not go right, not because I'm cursing, but it's because I can tell that you are not ready because this is not your decision. It is somebody else's decision, or it's informed by other factors other than yourself. So I let you go and you experience the world, and you get beaten and you get beaten and you learn your lessons. You become the prodigal child, and then you come back. I would still receive you, but you would have learned the lesson, right? So it would be in that context then that I know. But if then we look at other parents who say, when you can just never leave. No, you can't, even when you've explained it. And that's where you would find other children rebelling, or others just deciding, I'm going to just, okay, fine, keep you happy. But in staying in that environment, they become resentful. So the principles around this are along those lines. So the one whom you subject yourself, no, let me put it this way. The one to whom you submit must also be submitted to another authority. So if you believe in Buddha, in God, in whatever deity that you believe in, or you believe in ancestors, still, as the parent, you need to be covered in order to sufficiently cover those under your care, so that they can learn this thing because it's passed down.
Okay. Okay, I hear you again. You've said a mouthful, Khalil Gibran, the prophet, and all that. There's something that also popped in my mind again. I think what I'm gathering is that there is a responsibility on both sides. The one who is the authority figure, and the one to whom, the one who is submitted under authority. And
Yes.
again, I think, I'm still struggling to strike that balance of seeing it working in a perfect context, because to be fair, I can't say I've seen it being modeled before,
Yeah.
I've seen it, let me not say, dismiss it completely, but I haven't really seen it perfectly modeled, as you put it, because there's always that friction of, like you're saying right now, there's an umbrella sense. There's this umbrella, for example, in the church environment, where in a marriage context, where they say it's God, and then it's the man, and then it's the the woman, right? And having lived in this world that we live in the reality that exists currently, and understanding that power, and I think that's the word now that comes into the conversation, is the issue of power play, and I think that's where I'm trying to tune in as I'm doing this conversation, to say, but then where is my power? Where is my self-definitive power that has nothing to do with you? Do you get what I mean? When I'm born, yes, I'm a child. You can tell me where to play and what not to play. I'm a teenager and all of that. How are you? What would be the responsibility? I think maybe we can expand this on this in the sense, yeah, the one who is the authority figure right now, right? What in the perfect sense, but in perfect setting, what would be the responsibility of the, I'm asking this to you and to myself, the responsibility of the one who is the authority, who's holding the office of the one who's in authority, or who's the one who is in covering, in honoring. And when the Bible says submit unto one another in love, in honoring the one to whom you are, the one you are covering. What would be responsibility in that? What acknowledgements would you make? So for me, if I were to answer that, is first and foremost is to see God in the next person. Acknowledge that you may hold an authority space, but you cannot, the context of God in the space is not limited to you. So whether it's a child, in fact, I'm not talking much of children here, because with children, it's pretty much obvious, if you get my point, to a certain extent, it's my house, my rules. It's that way. That's fine. Yeah. But now I'm talking about adults currently, especially people in churches, people in marriages, people in businesses, people in daddy wounds, mother wounds, situations that obviously sometimes, and authority again, sorry, I'm blabbering, but I'm sure we will find everything here. People who, again, are subjecting themselves to authorities of beliefs and thoughts and patterns and generational issues that have been models, because that's what I'm saying, that in a perfect setting is a good point, but many people are subject to so many authorities, because an authority is an energy or a person that holds a certain, it basically dictates your life. It tells you where to go, where you couldn't go, how to move when you shouldn't move, and all of those things. I'm also not putting a bad image on these things. So I'm saying for adults now, right? If I am a pastor, or I'm a father in the example that you gave, how do I honor the next person's journey? How do I honor? How do I know? Because also when you're saying somebody's ready, what if they are ready, but not in the sense that you think they should be ready for? Because maybe life is calling them to learn a particular lesson. I don't know if that makes sense. So yeah. I'm just trying to open more and more into this conversation. So I'm just saying, maybe to park the children's issue, maybe use it as an example to draw a parallel, but kids are quite obvious. But in the sense where now you're an adult, you're in a church, you're an adult, you are in a marriage, you're an adult, you are serving, wherever you're serving, right? In a company, in a business, I don't know where you would be. What would be the responsibility of the one who's in authority, and what would be the responsibility towards the one who submitted to them, and what would be the responsibility of the one who is submitted to the authority, in a sense that it doesn't diminish the God in me. Because that's always what I personally battle with. How do you not diminish my sense of sovereignty as a being?
Yeah.
My sense of God as a being, because God is not a waterfall, if you get my point. He's not going to go from here, fall on you, and then fall to the child. The child comes as spirit as it is. God loves them. God is in them. God walks with them. Do you get what I mean? So, and then as you learn, and I'll use my personal journey would be in Christianity, for example. You sit under a teaching, then the teaching grows you and grooms you to the point that it can actually cause you to clash with the authority. Do you get what I mean? Where now, and I'll use biblical reference, where now, and I used to teach on this, where God says to Abraham, is it Abraham, the father of Jacob, go kill your child in the mountain,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
If Abraham was under somebody's authority, who is a leader, and you say, I'm going to kill, it's you, I'm going to take my child and I'm putting Zebu up there for offering, and you tell your wife, do you get what I mean? And the person is like, no, but that can't be God. Do you get
Yeah.
what I mean? You're
Yeah.
not ready to step out in that level. Do you get what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
supposed to set up my own ministry. I'm supposed to set up I want to set up my own business, so to say. How do you honor me without diminishing the God in me?
You know, you're raising very, very interesting and powerful points. Um, it then takes me back to this thing. Um, the thing about authority is
Mm-hmm.
that it gives one power, but
Oh, okay.
but it is authority in the unperverted sense.
Okay.
In the unperverted sense, where if we go back to the context of God, look at God. He's omniscient, omnipotent. He's everywhere, doing like he is Kidaman, ne?
Mm-hmm.
And he comes into your life and then he says, I'm knocking on the door and I'm waiting. Like this is God. He can just come and change your life, right? But he doesn't. He waits on you. He has the authority, he has the power. He can simply say, dude, I'm in your life now. I'm controlling everything. You are going this way or you are going that way. Oh, you say you're ready. I know you're not. So stop, and then blocks everything. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not really how God operates. So if we really want to look at an authoritative figure,
Mm-hmm.
we can take the example from God. We can look at the principles with which God operates. He says, you choose. I give you heaven, I give you hell, I give you life, I give you death. Choose life. And then it is up to you. He still leaves it all up to you. So, an ideal or authoritative figure is not
Mm-hmm.
one who would say, I want to trump what you have said or what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
As you've said, that authoritative figure has to listen and respect the God in you. That authoritative figure, from the time that you are born, is is fully aware of the God in you.
Mm-hmm.
But he or she wants to make sure that the power that you have is not covered by anything that is not supposed to be there. So they help remove everything so that your power shines through, your light shines through. And their responsibility is simply that. That's why they would become accountable should you not make the right decisions. It is their responsibility, but they're not at a certain point. The accountability would stop when you make decisions contrary to what to how they would have guided you or to how they would have raised you. That's why in a church we must rightly divide the word and not bring our own ideas
Mm-hmm.
that are
Mm-hmm.
contrary to the word. In marriage, I must not marry because I want to own a woman, own a family. But I must marry because I know that this woman is going to be my partner and I
Mm-hmm.
am going to be her partner in this journey of life. The children are entrusted to me to
Mm-hmm.
raise so that they go out into the world. Take it back into business, into corporates. The employees who come in, they are partners in helping us achieve what we have set out to achieve as an organization. So the
Mm-hmm.
employees really are not necessarily our subjects. But in order for us to achieve what we need to achieve, there needs to be some form of a structure.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that structure may require that there is somebody who is at a level who then guides the decision and the direction, and
Mm-hmm.
others contribute. So it's not us. That's why you would hear concepts like a leader is a server. So they serve those who are entrusted to their care. It's even applicable in the corporate world, in the family space, in so many spaces. It's there. But then immature people get into positions where they're supposed to have authority, right? And then they think they're the boss, and then they want to call the shots because of whatever deficiencies that they have in them and how they've been raised and how they have not seen true authority being modeled. They then pervert the concept of authority. Hence, then we find ourselves back into things like now we have to define true love. We have to define real authority, true authority, or whatever those prefixes that we may put in front of, may put for those concepts. So in their pure sense, we can simply say, I have love. I have a friend, without saying I have true love. I have a best friend, or I have a good friend, because then we have perverted all these things.
Okay, well, I feel you keep concluding the matter for me. Thanks.
And this was supposed to be rude.
Yeah, no, I think, like I said, I came here a bit hazy, because of my own challenges with authority. Do you get what I mean? Having been at the receiving end of what you say is a perverted form of authority, even in good settings, because I believe that sometimes people with good intentions, right? Really good intentions, right? But because they haven't, and I think this goes back to the point you made earlier, the responsibility of an authority figure is themselves to subject themselves to another authority, which means the responsibility, then they become submitted to another authority. So if I'm just throwing back what you said back to you to say, this is how I hear it. So if I'm in authority as a person in the pure context of things, I am subject. I am submitted myself. This is how I would know how to honor the other person who submitted, right? Because I myself am submitted to another authority, a higher power authority, whoever you deem it to be, because then that's an all-knowing power that knows both me and that knows you as the one who is subject to me at this point in time. So I am not guided by my own individual biases that I might have. And I'm not saying that you are limited to that. You are, but again, your own leading is biased at all points. But at all points, you know that it's a clean thought, if I may put it, and it's a pure sense of holding space for another person. So one would be the responsibility is you must make sure that you're submitted to a higher power. And I think the higher power is also means to your higher self, which means you are continuously working towards improving yourself as a person, as a parent, as whatever it is, right? In the pure context of things where things are not perverted. You yourself are developing, you yourself are moving, you yourself are growing as a person. And because obviously another person will grow you and they will challenge you. So it means you yourself must have room to expand, because the person who will have that conversation that says, how can I gauge that you are ready, cannot be a person who is stagnant as a person or who's stuck up. You know what I mean? So that's the first thing that came up for me, to say you have to be yourself submitted to a higher authority, and you yourself have to be always aligned. And I think if we have to bring it to a certain different settings, it means you are always consulting about the other person.
Yes.
So that you don't take them at
Yeah.
face value, because who they were 3 days ago might have changed to where they are right now. So you must always consult. If it's prayer, then pray. Do you get what I mean? If it's sitting, it's sit, because I think perversion, that's why I'm saying that there are people with good intentions who have decided that I'm going to hold space. Holding space could be accommodating adult children in your house. Do you get what I mean? It's not it's because everybody's going to be married at that time. Do you get one? Because of whatever issues, one issue or the other. Holding space in a household for adult children, right? knowing how to parent when you are a mother-in-law. Do you get what I mean? Holding space for your children when they're in marriage, holding space for the sheep of God, the flock of God, if you're the shepherd. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it would mean that you need to always be on your toes. You can't do it and you are lackadaisical, if you get my point. You can't be relaxed about
Yeah.
it. As your responsibility, you have to make sure that as an authoritative figure, I am always consciously working on, consulting with God, with the authority over your life, because this word that I'm consulting is the one that created you, right? But perhaps you're not developed to the extent where your senses are refined enough for you to pick up the signal, if you get my point, so we're still working on refining your senses, but also learning you as an individual. So I think the second thing for me would be to first dissociate yourself from the one who is under you. When you said something in when you quoted Khalil Gibran, when you spoke about strive to be like them, not them, for them to be like you. This is when you have to dissociate yourself so you don't make it personal. One, two, you don't. When I'm saying not make it personal, I don't mean it in the good sense, because it's a personal thing, but I'm saying don't take it so personal that now you want to control this person, because perversion comes in different forms. So you dissociate so that you, at all points, your responsibility is to help them individuate. So you have to hold the space of them as an individual who is whole, who is wholly God. For me, that's what comes up, as well as what would be the responsibility of the one who's holding space and the one to whom I'm submitted to. And then, so those are the two things that come. I'm trying to remember, there was another thought that popped in when you were talking. When I asked that question to ask, or what would be the responsibility of the one in authority? That would be, I said, you must first be submitted and always consult, dissociate yourself, and always keep up with the other person, and then provide room for them to grow. And I think the authority figure also has a responsibility to know when to let go. As much as the submitted one knows when to step out, it's important for that one to also know when it's time to release. Do you get my point?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So I think those are the things that comes to say, okay, in this set space of authority and submission, how then do we balance? Given the context of everything that happens in the world, what is the pure sense of it? So for me right now is then, what is my responsibility as the one who is submitted at this point in time? What informs submission? But how do I guard against perversion? For
Yes.
example, it will rear its head here and there, I believe. How do I guard against perversion? How do I not oversubmit? I don't know how to, it's probably not a word, but I'm making it a word today. How do I not oversubmit, as in to always now be, to guard against dependency? Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Because sometimes how we develop, you find that you become so dependent on authority outside yourself.
Yeah.
How do I not diminish my own growing internal authority? How do I nurture my internal authority at the same point as I am being under somebody's authority? Like I said, I might be in a household, and I'll use an extreme example of meat eaters.
Yeah.
And I find that as I develop as a person, my spirituality is now leading me to become fully off animal products, right? It's not something we do. And then now you are handing me in marriage as my father.
Yeah.
And with your masiko as a dad, you believe that an animal has to be slaughtered.
Yeah.
I'm in a path now that is dictating to me that I don't want to be spilling blood. I'm just using an extreme example.
Yes.
So the dance again, how do you again work around what would be my responsibility to guard against my own authority, and how do I balance with the one to whom I am submitted to? in a church context, for example, when somebody says, I was uncomfortable doing an altar call, for example, right? But I'm submitted under an authority that says you have to do an altar call. Do you get what I mean? But the
Yeah.
spirit in me is like, Gail, we don't do that here, you know?
Yeah.
His soul rest in peace. We don't do that here. The spirit is like, no, we don't do that here. How do you, what would be, I think we can expand on defining the again, the pure sense of submission, you know, where now I am growing and I'm now maturing and getting ready to step out. But the stepping out is what you call it. How do I guard against my own soul, my own spirit? What are my responsibilities? I think, in essence, what are my responsibilities? Let's explore and expand further. I think the questions keep trying to formulate, but I get you. I'm sure you get me.
Me too. And in coming and responding to that, immediately what came was, you mentioned that if I have people who are under my authority, I should always be consulting about them and for them as to how do I lead them, right? And I must not be stuck on tradition, so much so that even when their spirit is against my tradition, I still want to impose my tradition. Because then that means I am not then aligned. I am not connected with regards to you. Probably, let's say there are 3 children or there are 3 people under my care. This one is against the blood issue, but this one does not have a problem. I need to be aligned to realize that when this one says, please, I am on a path where I don't want to spill blood, or there shouldn't be any blood spilled on my behalf. I therefore need to be so connected, so aligned that I realize and understand what your path is. If, for example, I believe in abapansi and my tradition dictates that I do that, I would need to on an aside, go and say, Nina Papansi, this is what's going on, right? Allow me to deviate from this. Not that I am disregarding you, but because this person has chosen this path. So let them, bless them as they are, and let them be on their path. If I am subjected to God and the church and strictly in that route, and you say your spirit says you don't do altar call, I will say, Lord, this person is on this path. This is what they believe. If indeed this is the path that they are on, help me to align and allow them to follow where the spirit leads them. And when the spirit has led them to that path, I can, please show me who else can do the altar call. Because if I force you, then I'm overriding the God in you, the spirit person who is in you. And therefore I am imposing my authority on you. And then again, you asked about what is my responsibility as the one who is subjected under authority. Firstly, subjection or submission, according to the Oxford Dictionary, it says to accept or yield a superior force or to the authority or will of another person. So first, I have to allow myself to subject myself to that. But in doing that, I must also realize that subjection or submission does not absolve me of the responsibility. So whatever I am responsible for, I'm responsible for my growth. I'm responsible for my development, but I must also be aligned. And if I have chosen to submit to a particular authority, I should not frustrate that authority. In the case of a church or a marriage or parenthood, whenever I feel I am my God in me, or the God in me, or my spirit is being overpowered, I need to take it to the authority of my authority, if that makes sense. So if I feel my mother or my father is overriding my spirit person, I can take it to God so that God can communicate with that person, provided that person is aligned. But I believe that with alignment, we cannot necessarily find ourselves in places where we override another person's identity or another person's um, spirit man. So for as long as we are aligned, I believe that we can work and walk with each other in getting to a particular point, in growing and moving forward. Um, and that's where I believe that authority has a role to play in our lives. We've seen people who want to be self-accountable, self whatever, and that seldom goes the right way, if I may say that. That seldom becomes productive. Think about somebody who says they are self-made and they're wearing a Gucci suit. Like
Why would you do
they're,
that?
they're, they're, se- they're self-made,
Like,
but they've gone through an academic process of getting a qualification, of doing this. They've read somebody else's books. They've consumed somebody else's knowledge, and yet they say they are self-made.
well, I think I'm laughing at the fact I'm just making notes here. And now let me take it from where we are right now, especially in the sense of self-made. I think there are two instances, right? There are two instances where this can occur, right? Where a person says, no, I need to account to myself and I be self whatever. It is when you realize the one you're subjected to is no longer serving your spirit, right? And that's when you would individuate. And I think that's where I was trying to take us as well, because I'm actually realizing it's a very layered topic. Your
Yeah.
topics are all so layered. So layered. You give snippets, but oh my gosh, yeah. So for me, it would be me. I realize that in actual fact, the person I'm subjected to is no longer aligned to my path, right? The God in me, he doesn't see the God in me at all, right? Which means he doesn't see the God in himself, and he's no longer consulting to his God or whatever about me, right? So in order to protect my space, in order to protect myself, in order to, I mean, they say guard your heart with all your might. Do you get what I mean? So I will remove myself from this place. Do you get what I mean? Because as much as you said that my responsibility as the submitted one is to not frustrate the authority, it's also the responsibility of the authority not to frustrate the submitted one, right? So if you're now causing a lot of frustrations, it might also mean that I need to then remove myself from the equation. And that also comes, depending on the extent of that, it's either I confront you, or in actual fact, I can, what you call it, sorry, I got distracted a bit by the message.
Sorry.
It's fine. So I could just remove myself from the equation. In the case where I cannot, it's at the extreme where I can't talk to this person, because the first order of things would be to engage that, obviously, right? So that'll be that. And secondly, again, it could be in the point where somebody's like, nope, I don't like authority. It's when you have seen things, right? Most of the time, that's when it happens. But I think this is actually helping me because it's healing me in its own way, in a very weird way. Because for the most part, authority has always meant overpowering. Do you get what I mean? So when
Yes.
people, it has really, in the world we currently live in, it means somebody somewhere is running your life, but you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? And you have no right to self. You have no right to your own individuation. You have no right to decide what you want for yourself. Do you get what I mean? So the immediate encounter with the word authority, it doesn't shock me that it would go to, please leave me out of it. I know what I want. I know who I am. In fact, authority is the enemy. Do you get what I mean? It is
Yes.
enemy. So I feel then that, funny enough, I'm actually thinking in a very interesting way where we are arriving in this journey, this conversation journey that we have, is I'm starting to see that this works in a sense where two mature individuals agree. I don't know if that makes sense, that I am to be your teacher. I am to be your leader. There is a mutual agreement as both are informed by the same spirit. Do you get what I
Yes.
mean? That
Yes.
especially like I said, in the case of adults, you have to sit with your spirit enough to recognize this God in this person being the same reflection as you. Do you get what I mean? That,
Yes.
when they say we met and our spirits connected,
Yes.
we met and our spirits connected. Again, I think that's the one part of it that's coming to me right now, that it's between, in a perfect sense, it will be between two mature individuals. But then again, because we don't necessarily live in a perfect world, I do believe, like, when a seed goes into the ground is not necessarily a perfect it's perfect, but it's dirt and there is a whole lot of stuff happening there, right?
Yeah.
So I also, and I'm now again allowing the questions to come and to flow with the conversation.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering, there is a point where authority is tough, right? And it might not be necessarily because they're not consulting for whatever reason, right? But then it might not be time for you to come out. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes sense,
Yeah. Yes.
where I know where I one kafela, this, no. Do you get what I mean? And
Mm.
then but it's not time to leave yet, So
Yeah.
part of me says that the responsibility of the one who's in submission is to be in constant communion with the divine, constant, continual communion with the divine. Because one thing I'm taking is authority may not be perfect.
Yes. Yes.
Authority may not in itself be mature, right? But
Should we
when
should we
we,
say the authority, the one in authority?
the one in authority, okay, the
Yeah.
one in authority may not be mature, or may have their imperfections,
Yes.
may have things you disagree with, may
Yes.
be in a state, may be going through a phase, but your responsibility as the one who is submitted to this authority is to know what you are there for. So you would be in constant, continual communion with yourself and the divine. So you create your own sacred space within yourself that you consult with, right? All the time.
Yeah.
And so that you know that the minute you meet friction with the authority figure, it's not necessarily a point of departure. When you spoke about the right time to leave, it's not
Yeah.
necessarily, does not necessarily mean, hey, this person is not serving the purpose, I'm out of here. Do you get what I mean? So it's in recognizing the God in them. And by this, I mean, we tend to think God as pure light. Let me put it that way. They say love is kind, love is patient. Love, if we say God is love, I'm using big words here. So
Yeah.
yeah. And I am taking them, yeah. If God is love and I say I love you, they say love does not keep a record of wrongs. Love
Yeah.
is long suffering, love is a whole lot of other not so nice things. Do you get what I mean?
Mm.
So I also need to be in tune, so in tune that when I look at this person, I see them as God would see them, and then accept them and love them regardless. Do you get what I mean? So seeing a God in a person for me in this instance does not necessarily seeing their perfection, their strength, is knowing their weaknesses, accepting them, knowing their terrible stuff, and accepting them. Do you get what I mean? But
Yeah.
your responsibilities, you know yourself so well. And if I know that, Zibu, I am here to learn from you the algorithms of God knows whatever, but you are sometimes drunk as a person. Do you get what I mean? It's to learn to dance with your shadow. I don't know if that makes sense. To dance with your darkness. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
As my authority figure, to learn how to protect my sacred space, to ensure that I won't be harmed. That's my responsibility, right? I won't be harmed because I'm not necessarily a child, a baby in the all sense of being a baby. I'm just a baby in this regard. I'm still young and you have what I need. Do you get what I mean? So I think
Yes.
this would be something like the art of getting what you want from a place that is really unlikely sometimes, or it does not necessarily make you happy or does not tick all the boxes. But
Yeah.
sometimes your spirit can say yes to a situation that is just crazy. And sometimes authority is there to refine us. So it might come as a sword. I don't know if that makes sense. Do you get what I mean? Where I'll give an example. There was an instance where in an organization, church space, when I was in, where there was a lot of friction that was happening, and then there was a mass exodus, right? And I had people close to me leaving, like not leaving as in planning. No, it will be after service, and they're like, I'm not agreeing with this person, therefore I am out. Do you get what I mean? But for the first time, when I got home after that conversation, and I knew that was the last time I'm seeing some of my friends in the space, you know, I mean, we go to certain spaces and we develop very close, intimate relationships that you forget why you're there in the first place. Then it becomes so much part of the whole experience, you know? So
Yes,
when
it is.
you leave, it sort of changes the dynamic of the whole thing. The chemistry changes and you feel like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? You know? And I got home and it felt so surreal. And I sat and I'm like, what do I do? You know? And the first thing that came was pray, you know? And I
Yeah.
prayed. And it was clear. The answer was stay. It's not yet time for you to go. And I'm like, but did you see what that person did? Lord, I can coach you on your word. Do you get what I mean? You
Yeah.
said, thou shalt, thou shalt, thou shalt. And God will say, but thou shalt not leave, not now. Do you get what I mean?
Yes.
Because August, I like how you say it in Zula, hawa butwa. You know, so you still need to stay in this fire. You know, you're still cooking. And when time came for me to eventually depart, it was so pure. Do you get what I mean? Yes, it had its
Yes.
own, it was because of my own, it was my time. Do you get what I mean? The discomforts had less to do with the authority figure
Yes.
than it did with my own journey of evolution that says, now it's time for you to go. So I think what I'm saying is that the authority might come to a point where it's imperfect, right? And might feel like it's out of tune. But it's your responsibility as a person, because people that we don't necessarily agree with all the time might have something that we need for our journey at that particular point in time. Do you get what I mean? If it's at a
Yes.
workspace, maybe they are offering something I need at that point. Instead of leaving now, I may need to put in 3 months because I actually know what I want from this person. There is a responsibility of you knowing what you're getting out of this relationship. Do you get what I mean? And again, seeing God in another person might mean understanding that there are people who we get stuff from. Like I'll find the words as we converse about authorities that I am learning, even in business, in relationships, and all of those things. That yes, there are situations where you have to go immediately. Do you get what I mean? You're like,
Yeah.
you're not entering. But again, in the purer sense of things, as a person, as one who is subjected to one in authority, it's my responsibility to be in constant continual communication with myself, and secondly, to also consult again with the divine, and then to acknowledge that the other person is God in their imperfection, in the imperfect state, and me knowing that I can still stay to get what I am there for, you know, because
Yeah.
it's part of maturing. Do you get what I mean? And it also is reflective of maturity. And I will take it back to the beginning when you said, if I came to you and I said, Papa, I want to get married. Do you get what I mean? Or Papa, I need to step out. I'm not agreeing with this value. You will gauge my maturity by how I approach the subject. Do you get what I mean? So it's not necessarily rebellion per se, but rebellion is also something we should talk about the other time when we have a conversation, has its own layers in itself.
Yeah.
But it's when you push back, you get what I mean? Or no, this is not me. It's sometimes a fight to push through the ground so that you can come out as a person. But I'm just saying, Jorge, you would gauge it from there. Let me cut off myself here because I will derail. Yeah.
I like the fact that you were saying my morning thoughts are layered, and unfortunately, when you then respond, everything you respond then starts bringing other topics, and it becomes this whole tree of topics that if we were to just go on, we would basically
Yeah.
be conversing the whole day.
Yeah.
We would start from one point, and then by the time we finish, we have gone that other way. That is if ESCOM does not come and do its load shedding. But you've said so much, and I feel not that I was feeling empty, but I feel kind of full, kind of filled with something. Um, and I appreciate your time. Um, I appreciate this space, and I want us to do it some more.
Yes, of course. I was hoping you would ask. I would. But I would have said I was Sibukante.
I want us to do it some more because there's so much to share, so much to give of ourselves that we seldom have those opportunities to do so. It's one thing just being here, but it's another just looking at each other like this. And what I love about this is that we can always take this and share it with others, because
Yeah.
what is freely given, we too shall also freely give to others. Yeah. And I appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you.
Going back into things that are not perverted, when I say I love you, it shouldn't be now. What does it mean? Unyakumfasa. No, no, but what does it? And I need not say I love you, my friend, or I love you as a friend, I love you as a brother, I love blah blah blah. It should just be I love you.
Yes.
Because we understand who we are, and we understand the space where we are, such that even when I meet my guy friends and I go, I love you, he needs to understand what I mean. I just mean I love you. I don't have to
Yeah.
explain it, and the thing of saying to people I love you, and then you kind of like, okay, say something back, we've perverted why we want to say I love you. When I
Yeah.
say I love you, it's me expressing where I am and how and where you are in me. You are in this space where I'm able to say that and let you know where you are. And if you say thank you, that should suffice.
Thank
If
you.
yes, if I say I love you and you kind of say, cool, that's sweet, you know, you responded, you acknowledged that you heard, and that's it. If you do get to say I love you too, it's because that's where I am in you, and that's who
Yes.
I am to you at that point. So I love you.
I love you, Z.
Have a, yeah. It's
Thank
been this fantastic.
Yeah, no, it has been. I think my closing comments would be, I came here and I came here raw, let me put it that way.
Okay.
And for me, this was an exploratory session. and not necessarily as in a tryout, but in a sense of discovery. You know, when you go on a journey, and normally when you come to the spaces, you come prepared, right? I was mentally prepared, right? And my heart was prepared and my being was prepared, but I came as a student. I don't know if that makes sense. I came myself subject to the unfolding of the actual topic, because I have never explored it in the purity of its sense. In the sense, it's like a new space for me to really sit with what exactly is authority, and allow the conversation itself to become the journey of expanding instead of teaching. Do you get what I mean? And allow
Yeah.
itself to say, I could be this, I could be that, I might be. So I think it's a beautiful space for even others to say, and I think it speaks again to authority and being submissive, to say, again, not all spaces are for us to just give direction, but for us to expand context, to remember certain spaces, because we know them from, like you say, a perverted sense, but to
Yeah.
just engage them, it was quite a challenge. It felt like a mental exercise, because I pride myself in my eloquence, but to find myself not, having to now think and again try to discover and then agree with myself and disagree with myself was quite a challenge. And I was like, oh my gosh, why did I do this? But I really appreciate that, because it is so relevant in my life currently. And again, it's relevant in the space we live in, especially with presenting with COVID-19,
Yeah.
those things, and the world as it's unfolding for us right now, the new consciousness, the new awakenings that we get to as people, is again, everything directs us back to ourselves. But my personal takeaway was, I appreciate all authorities in my life, and I appreciate the authority that is within more, because it's the guide. Wisdom is my guide, because I sit in that space and I'm able to follow the wisdom. I'm able to follow the inclination, the intuition, but everything around me is authority, is helping that. And now I know that authority comes in a lot of context. And as much as we were referencing one in a personified manner, it's the beliefs we have, it's the habits we have, it's everything that dictates our movement in our direction, our behavior, how we execute, how we live our lives. You know what I mean? It's the
Yeah.
authority in our lives, and how to submit. You have to also, it's submitting to my intuition, for example, submitting to a certain bad habit or a good habit. That's again submission. So it's the question should be, is this serving my higher self at all points? Is this aligned to the higher version or grandest version of myself that I have? Do you get what I mean? So the parameters that guides you to know your space as one subject to authority. So yeah, before I even start another topic, I'm going to say thank you so much for this time. I am looking forward to the next one, and thank you for challenging me as well.